Today we show you how a changing posing, composition and an effective base can completely alter the tone of a miniature with almost no kit bashing involved. So let's see some building and painting tips for this Nagash conversion in the Grimdark aesthetic. I am Dark Ages Workshop and this is the Grimdark Compendium. So in this video we will see how to make your miniatures look more grimdark. We will elaborate more on this topic in the future, but today let's start by demonstrating the basics of this philosophy on Nagash. All the building tips you'll find in this video are widely applicable, and the painting process can be streamlined into very simple steps: base color, value, filter and effects. I'll just say this as a reminder for later. Make sure to stay until the end of the video as we have some pretty exciting news that you don't want to miss. So let's see this conversion and painting project of Nagash, done by Zatkaskagun Miniatures. Let's start by quickly taking a look at how the original model is supposed to look out of the box. Overall, at a first glance we can see that it has some very cool and detailed starting shapes. However, the composition, as suggested, may seem a little bit too busy, and the floating pose with all the ethereal necromantic magic definitely makes things look a little bit too epic, towards a high fantasy aesthetic. For the Grimdark style, we want to diffuse this epic tone and go for a more grounded look. 99% of the finished product will be just the Nagash kit, so this will be a conversion aimed at retaining most of its original shapes and identity. So the first step is going to be addressing the posing for the character. Basically, every segment of the model's right leg gets manually separated here, trimming wherever needed, like here at the hip and the right knee. Feet also need some trimming and repositioning, and every segment gets pinned just temporarily until we got a clear view of the bigger picture. Now, the arm wouldn't really make sense in its original position, as we've got the legs in a standing motion, so we will want to find a new anchor place to glue the arm, preferably a lower stance. For it to look correct, we need to trim the upper part of this cloth area, and always make sure to double check if adjacent details fit nicely. The arm gets secured, and we could take advantage of the additional parts like elbow guard and shoulder pad to cover up any inconsistency. In this case though, we will go for an asymmetrical look and leave this arm with no shoulder powder on. The next thing to do is adding a first layer of detail, discerning what we want to use or scrap from the original design. Starting with the waistcloth, the idea for this one is to turn it into an actual cape that roughly starts from the shoulders. And we will need to do some trimming work to make sure the torso fits inside naturally. It's always a good idea to trim little areas at a time and just double check by dry fitting, even multiple times, and slowly letting your instinct guide you in pursuit of a cool composition. So when the bulk of the shapes start to look solid, it's time to glue everything up to this point, and then we slowly start adding a second layer of details or new materials. In this case, just a simple jewelry chain will do the job in adding some visual diversity an additional texture. Remember that cloth, copper wiring, hair, little rings and chains are absolutely perfect to enrich your models. It just feels good to the eye to add such varied materials, and really, it adds a tactile element to it. So, since our Nagash is not flying anymore, we definitely want to make him stand out and give it some verticality on a custom base. The lower platform and also the shield come from this old Bestiarum miniatures model called the Undead Knight. The skeleton warriors on the base are the Sepulchral Guard from Warhammer Underworlds, and the rock formation behind is just some epoxy sculpt, textured and modeled to look like a natural stone. There's plenty we can do to make a base that stands out, like adding some slate of different shapes and sizes, and bring further variation with smaller and different stones or sand. Tile grout or paver base, powdered mortar or cement. They look perfectly in scale, and usually they come in huge bags that will last you a lifetime. So once we get to this point, we do another fit test and make sure that Nagash and these strips of ethereal fabric are well implemented in the almost final composition. They were cut, trimmed, pinned and repositioned to swirl around the skeleton warriors to give some dynamism to the scene. At first, the model lost a little bit of its sorcerer/necromancer distinctive elements, mainly with the addition of the shield and the overall change of pose. But those traits are immediately reintroduced when tying the model to the basing work. Those ghostly tendrils coming from the cloak are getting into the base, corrupting the soil and bringing back the skeleton warriors to life. Even a simple but well thought out base can help you tell a story about a character or the state of its world. Now let's quickly take a look at some of the most interesting parts of the painting process. The primer, just a couple of coats of Steiner's Grey, and then we immediately focus on the cape. The base color is Aerial Yellow from Citadel applied with the airbrush, and it's followed up by Bestigor Flesh to introduce some value and depth to this yellow, so that we have this interesting transition, starting from Bestigor Flesh at the top of the cape, transitioning into the Aerial Yellow, and ending up at the very tips of the cloak into the grey primer. With wide open surfaces like these, we can take the opportunity to make some kind of freehand or pattern to make the model look more striking and interesting. So with just a simple pencil, we can start defining a stripe pattern with ease and use this as a guideline. And after that, here the stripes are being painted with Incubi Darkness. So we're staying in this chromatic field of grays and blues with a high contrasting yellow. As a finishing value step on the cloak, we use Fugan Orange by Citadel sprayed through an airbrush. This will go inside folds or areas where the fabric meets the armor, to deepen the shadows further and give it a kick towards a warm temperature. So, now that we have our base colors and values, it's time to grime up the miniature. A grime enamel wash through the airbrush can be used on armor in light sprays, almost as a filter. This time around, it's not even needed to remove it with mineral spirits. It is just used to reinforce shadows and transitions. Next up, a dust effect enamel will desaturate the colors, shift the temperature, and not overpower the original color. This pass especially brings everything together and establishes ambience and atmosphere. And finally, we pass on to the last enamel wash, which is the decay effect. In spattering passes, or simply applying it gently in small quantities. Any weathering, deposit or filter should be contextual to the setting surrounding the model, or it is tied to the concept that this figure embraces. For example, this is the Lord of the Undead, and we want to embrace the idea of decay, the visual implications of necrotic magical powers, and the materials withering away. But in the end, all you need is a base color, a value, maybe a pattern to draw the viewer's attention, and some unifying filters to play with surface finish and shadows. The shield here was done basically in the same way as our Mammon Gold recipe from our previous video, but using AK True Metal Iron instead of gold. The patina effect was just selectively done at the sides and finished up with Molotov Liquid Chrome as a highlight color to have a realistic, almost mirror-like sheen. Another addition was the use of the soft pressing technique, which consists in scratching back the superficial layer of color with a pointer tool to create visual interest. The soft nature of wax-based paints is perfect for this technique. It can look stunning, but it requires very soft hand and lots of control, trying to not create too many patterns or being too aggressive with the removal. Over at the Grimdark Compendium there is a Necron tutorial series that is based on this concept of soft pressing and grimdark metal applications. So if you're interested, feel free to check that out. So to finish up Nagash, we just need to address the base. The skeleton warriors were painted up with very simple base colors and following the exact same color palette and weathering effects of the Nagash figure. While the tendrils from the cape get manually painted with Nihilak oxide from Citadel, mixed on a wet palette with Celestra Grey and white to achieve different variations in color. The more we approach towards the end of the tendrils, and the more white we add to our mix. Then we can address the transition from the yellow fabric to the necrotic tendrils, starting with a thin spray of Incubi Darkness as a base color, and a very simple pass of the decay effect. So we turn down most of the high fantasy magical effects from the actual figure, but reintroduce them on the base, tying the theme of necromancy together. The base itself was mostly only base colors, enamel washes, and just pigment powders in this order. That simple approach, as we will draw the viewer's attention with the addition of some natural materials. Just a finishing touch, bringing some contrast and further interest with some plants and moss. We can add them in, one at a time and carefully, bringing some life in this deathly environment. That's a pretty stark contrast both in colors and shapes, as they bring another layer of verticality to the scene. You see that they fill this missing space between the height of the skeletons and the base, acting as an element of visual transition. For the same principle we were discussing in the building stage, different and varied materials will result in a higher degree of immersion. Once glued onto the base, they are blended in with a faded green pigment powder, just transitioning them and adding a bit of coloration right where these plants are growing. The cold-hearted and stern resting pose bring much more gravitas, but the torso and head slightly tilted this way at an angle suggest a bit of a dark and demented personality. There's nothing wrong in building and painting out of the box, but don't let yourself be constrained by standards and preconceptions, or if it's legal or not in tournaments. If you spot the potential in the basic shapes, try to shift your mentality, experiment, work creatively with materials, textures and paints, and try to narrate a story through body language and atmosphere. Before I leave you, I just wanted to share a little bit of news for the future of the channel and the Grimdark Compendium. We are starting some collaborations with new artists that will join the team. This means that hopefully, when things are finalized, we would be able to bring more content more often, both on the Grimdark Compendium and here on the YouTube channel. We are incredibly glad to have the feral painter on board with us. He's a gentleman and a great artist. If you want to take a look at his work, he has an awesome YouTube channel, and he has recently worked with us on a Deathwing course that you can find on the Grimdark Compendium. However, that's not all. Stay tuned as we've got another mystery member cooking some Grimdark goodness for you coming to YouTube pretty soon. So click that notification bell if you don't want to miss it. We have a ton of projects going on behind the curtains, like multiple Bestiarum miniatures courses, Age of Sigmar, 40k factions, and much more further down the line. While I'm at it, I will just tell you, I want to challenge myself to make the best possible representations of Loyalist and Chaos Marines, in my distinctive style, with no compromises. I've got plenty of ideas and concepts already, but please, feel free to leave a comment below and tell us what chapter of Marines you would love to see from our perspective. Make sure to subscribe for future content. Visit the Grimdark Compendium and take a look at our summer sale bundle with Villainy ink and video tutorials on discount. Hope you people enjoyed the video. I wish you a good week, and we will catch ya in the next.